Hey friends, it's Steven with Leviathan Snakes, and for this week's video, we are going to be talking about dual-sired clutches. When should you use multiple sires for a female? What are some pros, what are some cons, and is there anything that could wreck your season? And using this, could you potentially save your season? So this video idea actually comes from Rizky Alva. They had left a comment on last week's video, which we super appreciate. We love the comments. I was going through all the comments during the weekend and I was responding to everybody when I saw their question, just asking us to talk about multiple sires for clutches. So that's what we're doing. We hope you guys enjoy it. If you do, please like, comment, subscribe, and let's jump into it. There are lots of different reasons why you might want to use multiple different sires for a breeding female. And when we're talking about multiple different sires, what we're saying is that we have one female and we are considering pairing multiple different, usually two, but it could be more than two, multiple different sires to that same female. And I think that probably one of the most common reasons why you might want to use a multiple sires for the same female is that you are using a backup male. So when you are working with a backup male, there's various different ways that you can do it. But the reason why you would do this, the motivation behind it, is that you believe that the female is almost ready to lay her clutch. Maybe she's at 25mm follicles, maybe she's at 30mm follicles, and if you do not get a confirmed lock with her, then you may risk either her laying an entire clutch of slugs, which is kind of wasted. She goes through all of the effort of laying a clutch and you don't get any potential benefit from it, or she doesn't lay a clutch at all. So if this situation's going on, there are a couple different ways that you can approach having a backup male, but we're going to talk about it on the way that I think that is the primary way to use a backup male, then we'll go down some other potential variations. The first one is that you have a specific project that you are trying to push forward. So if you are working the sunset project and you have a banana inchy het sunset female, and you don't have banana sunsets, and you don't have inchy sunsets, and you don't have banana inchy sunsets, and then you have a cinnamon sunset male as your primary male, you want to pair those two together because it's going to make some amazing babies that, as far as I'm aware of, I don't think that a banana cinnamon inchy sunset has been hit yet. If I'm wrong, if somebody has hit it, leave it in the comment below because I'd love to see them. So your cinnamon sunset male is your primary male, but maybe he's young and he is not locking with her, or you are not able to ever see a lock, and you see that your female is at that 25-30mm mark, and you're like, all right, if I don't get a lock in now, she may lay a clutch that's going to be all slugs, or she may not lay a clutch at all. I need to put in a backup male with her. In this situation, if you had a sunset male, it would be perfect for it because you can still hit banana sunsets, you can still hit banana inchy sunsets, you can still hit inchy sunsets, and those are all animals that you wanted. It pushes your project forward. And in this situation, any babies that are not sunset, you know that they will still be 100% het sunset, whether or not they were sired from the cinnamon sunset male or your regular sunset male. So this is a situation where having a backup male using the same male, part of the same project, is going to be able to make sure you can push your project forward, because if you miss a year and she doesn't go, that can put you really far behind. Now, this is, in my opinion, probably the best way to use a backup male, but a lot of times people don't have multiple males that are kind of of the same caliber like that in a project, especially when you're starting out. So the other way that you can go about doing this is if you have a banana inchy het sunset female, you could pair a het sunset male to her. And it's a very similar thing. You still have the chance to push the project forward, but the downside on this one is that any baby that is not sunset, whether or not it was sired for sure by the cinnamon sunset male or your het sunset male, if they're not visual sunset, there is a chance that you could have a dual sired clutch where that baby that is not visual sunset is a 66% het instead of a 100% het. The only way that that would, in this specific scenario, not be true is if the non-visual baby also had cinnamon. Then you could know for sure that that one was 100% het sunset, because the only parent that could have given it sunset was a visuals, or could have given it cinnamon was a visual sunset. So when you are moving into backup males, the further you get from your primary male, the less desirable it can possibly be, because it can make it harder and harder to actually hit what you want and to know what all of the babies are. Another direction that you can go is you could pair a male that's not part of the project at all. And maybe it fits into the project, maybe it doesn't. It doesn't really matter. Maybe it's a completely different direction. But if you're pairing a male that is not part of your project at all, what I recommend doing is making sure that one of the males is either a super form of something or it's allelic with something. So like, let's just say that you had a butter Mojave male that for some reason you'd want to pair in this situation. The reason why that's good is any babies that ended up with butter or Mojave, you know that they were from that backup male, because in this specific situation, that backup male was the only one with those genes, and the fact that the backup male would pass either butter or Mojave to 100% of the offspring, it makes it easier for IDing down the road, even if there is a dual sired clutch where both of the sires end up fertilizing some of the eggs. So that's the biggest thing that I would say when you are working with multiple sires, is doing your best to know which parent sired the eggs, so that way you can properly ID them. Besides backup males, another way that you could go about using multiple sires for a dual sired clutch, or the potential for a dual sired clutch, is that you have two different projects that you want to work equally. Like, they are both awesome and you're super, super excited about them. In this specific situation, what I think that you should do is, if you don't care which male gets it, you would pair your male A during the first week of the month and your male B during the second week of the month for that same female. And then ultimately, once she ends up laying her clutch, hopefully she ends up laying her clutch, if the babies hatch out and they have the genes from male A, because maybe he was an allelic pairing, again, butter Mojave in this situation, you know that he is the one who sired those babies. And if the babies hatch out and they have genes that only could have been from male B, you know that those babies are sired from him. So in this situation, whether you get an entire clutch all from male A, you're happy and you're good, because that's a project you wanted to work. Whether you get an all clutch from male B, again, you are happy because you are completely satisfied with going that direction. And the last one is that somehow, in a very, very rare situation, you can get some of the eggs sired from male A, and you can get some of the eggs sired from male B, and now you get to progress both projects at once. Again, the biggest thing to keep in mind is knowing how you can identify the babies once they are hatched out. And the easiest way to do this is through an allelic pairing, a homozygous form, superform of a gene that the other male doesn't have. So that way you obviously know that those babies are going to be from the specific sire. If you are in a situation where your female is, let's say, building, but you are not sure if your primary male is actually locking with her, and you're like, okay, I don't think he's getting the job done, but I just want to get a clutch, so I'm going to put anything else that I have in there just to get a clutch. I do not think that you should do that. I think that, one, you should pay attention to the project. If the pairing that you're doing is just to have more eggs and just to make more babies, I don't think that that is a smart move right now. I think that it would actually be better to let her not go and get bigger, so that way she can lay bigger clutches in the future once she's ready to go, or to potentially just have some time off and rest if she's like gone multiple years in a row. Now, if you are just trying to get more babies for the sake of more babies, what may end up happening is that you make that backup pairing, that second sire, but you don't want to hold back any of the babies because it's not pushing your project forward. And if they don't really fit into the desired path of a different project, they might be hard to sell. And in this situation, you are left with a large amount of babies that you can't sell and that you don't really want. So I think that if you do not have a backup male, if you do not have a male that you are also excited about working their genes into the project, I don't think you should do it. I think you should just be like, okay, I'm just going to focus on my primary male, and if they don't go, that's fine. That is what it is, because I don't want to be put into a position where I have animals that I don't really want and other people don't really want. Another thing that I think that you should avoid when you are thinking about doing a multiple sired clutch or multiple sired pairings is that if the animals have so many genes that are in common, so like let's say that you have a banana inchy OD asphalt, and then you also have a banana inchy calico yellow belly, really, if those are like your two males, if you're pairing both of those males to the same female, the only way that you could tell those snakes who the parent was would be from the calico. And if they didn't have calico in this specific situation, or I guess OD in this situation you could also do. But if they didn't have those genes, you don't know which male sired it. And if you don't know which male sired it and it looks like it's yellow belly, you don't know if it's yellow belly and you don't know if it's asphalt. So that can be a situation where it makes it very, very hard to ID the snakes, and it's going to reduce the value than if you had just paired the asphalt to them and only focused on that. Or if you had only paired the yellow belly, then you knew exactly what the genes were and you can price them accordingly. So that is something else that I think you should be careful of, is having multiple different genes genes that overlap between both males because it makes it harder and harder and harder to ID them. The last thing that I think that you should be aware of when it comes to doing multiple different sires is the possibility that pairing the sire will make them go off feed, because that is something that happens fairly commonly. As once a male starts breeding, they can get so focused on breeding that they don't want to eat. And if you do it too young, it can delay their growth, and in some situations, males will breed themselves to death. Like, they just won't eat because they're so focused on locking that they will end up dying. So if you are using a male that is very young and they're your backup male and you're like, oh, I just want to get one lock in really quick, you may end up putting that young male in a situation that puts them in a bad position for their future ability to thrive. So that doesn't mean that it will always happen, and that doesn't mean that if they go off feed that you're not going to get them back on feed. But it's something that you might want to be aware of, is if you're like, okay, I have this backup male or this other male that I would love to put in, he's pretty young, but he's only going to go to 1, so that's going to be okay. You may pair him to that one snake, and then he goes off feed and you have trouble getting him back on feed. And once you do get him back on feed, it's time to really get him into the rotation, and he can't go to the multiple females that you had originally planned for him. So if this were to happen, it might be a situation where you would rather just not have the backup male, not have that multiple sire. So I know this was a little bit of a shorter video, but I hope it was helpful. If it was, please like, comment, subscribe, and we will see you next week.